let's explain what a data set is all about. So we think of data sets in WinSPC as a search engine to help you find events, alarms, or process changes that might be going unnoticed. Common searches are by date, by name, by tags, or to find items that have violations or changes in your stats over time. So the purpose of the data set is to filter data and provide that nicely filtered data to the other tools in WinSPC, like reports, dashboards, and analysis. Just to say it again, so you have the database, you have data sets to filter data from the database, and then you can view those results different ways in WinSPC using built-in tools. So let's launch WinSPC, and we'll get into some examples here. Data sets are located under the Queries Reports object in the main tree. When you click the main dataset node, you can view and access all these pre-made templates here on the right, nicely organized by category. There's about 100 templates altogether, and you can build your own. We're going to show you how to build your own in a few minutes, but let's first explore these templates that are built in that you might find useful for day-to-day interactions in your data. All right, the first folder contains templates based on activity. This can help you find recent data collected, maybe variables with new data last month, last week, this month or this week, today or yesterday. You can run an existing data set by double-clicking on it, and we'll choose this one here called Variables Active Yesterday. So this is performing a query against your database, and the end result shows a list of variables that have new data that was entered yesterday. And we've got about 12 here in the list. It's probably a good time to segue into some prompting options as well. In many cases, you might want to do a prompt to allow the user to choose a filter on the fly prior to running the data set. It's more dynamic. So here's a simple example in another template with prompting to select a date range, and we'll choose the bottom one here. Under the date range type, you can choose from relative or calendar lists. And we'll just say this week and click OK. So now the data set's performing the filtering for you and finds items in the database with data collected just this week. Good. Again, just to restate, the result of a data set is a list of items that meet that filtering criteria. We're going to show you some neat ways to interact with the data and the list once we get into these screens in a moment. The next folder down contains quality-based data sets. There are about 6 subcategories underneath this folder. Many of these are designed for use by your quality and engineering teams there. Some obvious choices might be to look for things with recent notes, corrective actions, or assignable causes. These could be from alarms that have happened recently. Now we'll go back to the templates again. And the next group down allows you to run basic quality calculations through the data set. Here you can find things like capable or incapable processes on active items, basically a good CPK or a low CPK. In this example, the term active means new data today, and you'll see that throughout all these options and examples. If we select incapable processes on active variables, it'll perform its search, do the calculations, and find all variables whose CPK is less than 1. So with a click, running the data set, within the data set rather, you can drill down into the variable analyzer, and you can see all the capability stats that we're calculating. And indeed, this one is below a 1.0 CPK. Good. Moving down, we're going to get into the next 3 folders and treat these as a group. They all do some significant number crunching on your data, and they've got a similar structure to them. Just to give you an example, let's go into the intermediate quality folders, and we're going to spend a moment talking about off-center processes on active variables. This is near the top of the right side of the screen. On this one, instead of showing the list view that you've seen, we'll run a capability ranking report on this. This is actually one of the template reports in WinSPC. So right-click on the data set and choose the report. I think a key point to emphasize here is that the data set is doing all the filtering, and then it's passing the resulting data to the report. And this report shows a comparison looking at CP versus CPK to help highlight which items might be running off-center, meaning the distribution is pretty good on these items. It might be a tight distribution, but the process is running high or low in the spec limit range, off-center. This might be a handy way to find some improvement opportunities where you might be able to adjust the process and help run closer to target. There are multiple data sets like this one, and they have unique abilities to look for statistical anomalies in your data. Hopefully point out changes that might be going unnoticed, especially if you're only looking at charts or monitoring for violations. Some good use cases there. Okay, we'll go back to the folders, and the next one down is the violations folder. We're going to look at this one a little differently and run a dashboard on a data set. So we right-click on the data set called Variables with Spec Limit Violations. We go to View As, and we'll choose Chart Matrix. So this data set has a prompt for the user to select the date range before it initiates the filtering. So it's a nice interaction to allow the user to make a selection on the fly. We'll choose this week, and when we run it, it performs the query and generates a multi-chart view and a dashboard. Some of you may have seen some of the dashboards in our last workshop. There's some neat interactions here where you can click down on items and drill into the variable analyzer or other reports or even other dashboards right from here. A bit beyond the dataset functionality, but it's again showing you that the dataset's doing the filtering and then passing the results to the end view. The view could be a report, a dashboard, or an analysis. All right, close this. There are a few other categories of templates underneath this, like the universals group. This one shows lists of parts or variables, basically all-encompassing. The trending datasets group helps you look at specific patterns in your data over time, and there's a couple different ways you could use that. But these all work the same ways as these others that we've already touched on here. So that gives you a summary of some of the 100-plus templates that are already built in and ready to go. We're going to move on and create a new data set next and take a look at how we can build these on our own. Starting under the workshop folder, right-click to add a new data set. We'll give it a name, and then double-click to open this up. By default, when the data set runs, it'll show you everything in the database. In this case, I've already have parts selected. Again, that's the default. So in the list below in the main white space, I can see all my parts. Alternatively, there are a few options on the toolbar to toggle this list and show other items, such as variables, attributes, collection plans, all with a click to change the list. We're going to stay with parts for now. We'll come back to these other options later. We're also going to get into some of these icons on the toolbar in a little while. All right, so we have everything in my database now in front of me. To narrow the list, we're going to add filters. And filters, as the name implies, are a way to easily query and search your database. Filters are added in the middle section where we click the plus sign to add a new filter. There are many different types of filters. You can hit the drop-down list on the top here under filter type to see some of the other options. First, let's search using the object name filter. And we're going to look for parts that contain a specific name. In this case, we'll type bottle. Click the plus sign to the right. It adds bottle to the search and run it. So now we have a list of all of the products in our database called bottle. This might be one way to find specific items or parts that are in multiple locations or folders throughout the system. You don't know which folder they're in, but this is a quick way to get to them. Let's edit this filter, and instead of using a name here, another approach would be using the familiar WinSPC tree structure through the object list filter type. Here you can select a single item, such as bottle, or a group of items, even across multiple folders. Run it, we can see the results here. This might give you a way to find variables or parts in multiple locations throughout the system. All right, maybe you only want to see items from this group that ran recently. We're going to add another filter, and we're going to choose to filter by data collection activity in this case, meaning new data was added to the system. So we use the data collection filter type. We'll look for at least one subgroup and select a date range below. We'll go with this week. So we get a list of parts that ran this week according to any data that was captured in the system over that time. Good. We can continue adding as many filters here as we need to help narrow in on a particular type of issue. Let's go back and look for just violations within this data set. Under filter types, there's two different kinds that do this, control limit checks or spec limit checks. Under control limit checks, you could choose from all the Western Electric rules or some of the others that are pre-built and ready to go. In this example, we're going to look for items that were outside standard spec limits. So we'll choose specifications, enter at least one in violation, and select yesterday for the date range. It refreshed, and it's narrowed in on bottles that have new data and spec violations recently. We've seen some customers use this to help summarize recent events or violations to help report in plant production meetings, maybe in regular internal meetings and reviews. Probably the most powerful filter here is to look for stat changes in your data over time. There's some neat ways to apply the stat filters. Let's first remove a few of the previous filters, and we're going to rebuild this one a little differently. You can delete filters, just hit the minus sign, like we're doing. We're going to uncheck a few items under the object list filter. We'll get back to just the bottle. And instead of searching for parts in this filter, we're going to change the focus to look at variables. So on the toolbar, we change from parts to variables. Next, we'll add a new filter, and this time, we're going to look at the stat value filter type. So here you can build an equation using some simple drop-down options. And the first option on the left is where you choose which stat you want to monitor. All of our stat calculations are posted here. So you can view average, CP, PPK, standard deviation, and many, many others. This will be the left operand of the equation. We're going to use CPK, and we'll look for variables that have a CPK less than a certain value, like 1.0. Run it, and now the data set is doing all the calculations for CPK against each of the variables we've selected, and it's happening all right at that moment to generate the list. All right, let's put a new twist on this. We're going to go back into the filter and add one more filter type here to see which of these might be costing us the most money based on the unique cost calculations in WinSPC. So this time in the calculation, we'll select cost of process variability on the left side. This is the cost of variation per variable, which in other words, it's the cost of not making each unit right at its target value. We're going to set the rest of the equation to look for cost of variability greater than 25 cents per bottle. We'll run it. It refreshes the list and provides an update. Let's click on wall thickness here to open up Variable Analyzer, and we can see what those costs look like. We'll go to the Cost tab, and I'll draw your attention to the far right on the screen. The cost of variability is available as a flyover, and you can look at the per unit, per thousand, and per million in costs related to variation on this item. Hopefully this example could be used to help you build some justifications for making improvements or process changes. Again, WinSPC is doing all the heavy number crunching for both the stats and these cost calculations right on the fly. Another way to use this, we actually have a report that summarizes these costs. We can load it up right from within the data set itself. We'll go to Preview on the toolbar. You can get to all the pre-made templates and all the reports right from here. And in this example, we'll choose the Process Improvement Savings Report. By the way, the icon next to that one on the toolbar is to get access to your dashboards. So you could run the dashboard right from the toolbar. Same way we just did the report. And I'll restate again, the data set's doing all the filtering and the calculations as the basis for the report, and then it passes the data to the report or the dashboard so you can view the results. Here it's showing a variety of costs related to the variation on these items. This is, again, one of the template reports built in WinSPC. Well, that was a more complex example. Let's go back into the data set one more time, and then we'll point out some other useful items right from the toolbar. We'll start on the left side. The first one here allows you to save the settings of the data set that you just built. So it would save the filters and any of the choices that you made while you're configuring it. Just to the right of that, you can export the results of the data set to a text, CSV, or Excel file. Might be useful if you want to manipulate the data or look at it different ways. One more icon over from there copies data to the clipboard, so you could drop it somewhere else. We also want to introduce you to the concept of using a refresh timer here. The data set will refresh itself automatically every 15 minutes by default. It'll keep the list current for you that you see on screen now. Or, with the refresh timer, click the icon on the toolbar, and you can set how many seconds, minutes, or hours for the refresh. On the bottom, you'll see the countdown, and then it refreshes itself. There might be a few ways you use this within the data set on its own, using this view. But another use case that might be more relevant would be to enable the timer and then view the data set as a dashboard so it refreshes itself according to that time interval, always keeping the dashboard up to date. Good. All right, we have one more use case to tie this all together and simplify some reporting options for everyone. We get a lot of requests to run reports that only include a specific set of data. We can marry a data set to a report using a report book. This would require that you would have built the data set in advance, which we just did. Let's build a new report book and give it a name. And open it up. Very straightforward configuration here. In the top field, select the report template you want to use as the output format. And we'll use the C of A with tags report. This has a nice one-page summary. Just below that, in the bottom field, we select the data set. We'll choose bottles. Click OK, that saves it, and then we can right-click and preview to run it. So it runs the data set, it passes the data to the report, and displays it on screen here in a C of A. Now any of your users could run this report and get filtered data with a single click right on that report book. Good. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here today. That's all we had planned. Based on our experience working with customers, many of them use the pre-built templates that are already there. You might want to explore those and get familiar with them. They can handle a wide variety of use cases right with a click. But you can also build your own, and hopefully you've gotten more comfortable based on what you've seen today and make progress as you work through it. I know a lot of times these come into play when you're looking for items by name or by date. If you want to search for items that contain a specific tag value, looking at maybe just a lot number or a specific job or a shift or data from one line versus another line. These are all ways the data sets can be used to generate results. And of course, we're all here to help if you have questions. Our support team, myself, or Frank, we'll be glad to walk you through them. And it looks like we're getting some questions in. We've got a list that we're gathering. Just give us a moment. We'll take a look at some of the different questions that are here. All right, the first one I have, kind of something I just mentioned in the last statement. Can data sets filter for tags? Yeah, we didn't really show much detail on that, so let's go back into the workshop and the examples folder. I think I have one in here that filters by lot number. Yeah. We're going to run this one. This one's pre-built, but I'll show you the setup. Click on the filter. Yeah, click to change. Good. This one uses the data collection filter. And instead of just filtering for data values or how many data points, it filters using the tag setup on the screen. So you would configure this in advance by selecting the tag name from the drop-down and choosing the specific value within the tag that you want to use for your filter. And here we have lot number 10. Good. Let's run this. Well, we've already got the results displayed, but this is finding variables that have that specific lot number 10 assigned or stamped on data when it was collected. You can also turn on a prompt for tags. So you could prompt the user to select a lot, a shift, a machine, a line number, any of your tags right on the fly before they run their data set or the report, or the dashboard. Okay, great way to narrow in on specific uses for the data.
Brad, I'm going to jump in here. One of the questions is, how do you get from the dataset builder that we're in right now to the variable analyzer? And I'm not sure if it was clear, but you simply just double-click on one of these variables, and it will launch the variable analyzer. It's that simple.
Yeah, we might want to show too, Frank, on the setup. You could also get to, well, not in the setup here, in the parts tree, you can run a data set right on a part. Of course, it'll filter for all the variables in that part, but you could refine it and add other filters from there. So if you went into the tour, for example, drill down into bottles, and then right-click on bottles, you can query it, which brings up the data set builder. Another way to get there. This will show you all the variables by default, but of course you can add more filters right from within this. A lot of common use cases. Oh, and also in the list below, you can right-click and check and uncheck items on the fly. Everything you filter here gets passed through to the other views. Again, the variable analyzer, a report, or a dashboard. So if I just, let's say I selected 2 or 3 of the items in the list, and then Frank used the same chart matrix dashboard, just grab maybe 2 or 3 of them. You could grab a dashboard or a report and preview it right from here. View as chart matrix. So we've only selected 3 of them, and it'll build the dashboard based on that selection on the fly. We had another question. Can data sets run against attributes? Yep, right from the toolbar, you can toggle the view between variables, attributes, or collection plans. I've used this a lot with collection plans because you already have your items grouped in a collection plan, maybe by station or by a specific set of tests that you do or some other operation within your plant. And then you can get a report or dashboard on just those items. I know we did have a couple questions come up last time and this time about recording data, recording these webinars. And just to let everyone know, we do record this. We'll post it up on our website probably within the next week or so. We also send out the link so you'd be able to share this or watch it again. So look for the thank you email after our workshop. Or if you go to the video tour section on our website on the main page, there'll be a section there for all the workshops that we post. We still have a couple other questions coming in. Give us a moment. This one is kind of like the report books question we had earlier. Can you assign a data set to work with a dashboard? There's a couple different ways you can do that. One option would be through the station settings. And Frank, if you just go to stations and open up Armstrong LT, this is a neat use case. Maybe you have a station out on the floor, a large monitor, and you always want WinSPC to come up preloaded with a specific dashboard and a filtered data set. So every time you launch that computer, it launches WinSPC with this dashboard and the data pre-filtered, maybe to only show items for that work cell or that line or that operation right there on the dashboard. Pre-configured, saved. Let's not save it. Now anytime that station launches Windows and opens WinSPC, it's going to go right to that view. We'll keep the questions open for another moment if you'd like to stay on. All right, I think that's it. We're going to wrap it up. I just want to say thanks, everyone, for joining in. We're going to keep doing these workshops, hopefully on a monthly basis. Look for the next invite, and look for the recordings to be posted up shortly. Thanks for your time here, and enjoy the rest of your Friday and the weekend ahead. Bye-bye.